Good morning. My name's Bree, and if you guys have been at church for the last few weeks, you will have been lucky enough to hear our What Faith sermon series that we've been journeying through together. And what it's involved is speaking with different members of our congregation and the people amongst us, members of our church family, and hearing the stories that they've journeyed through and the faith that they've had, which has then encouraged our faith, and we've been able to be blessed by their stories. So I have the privilege this morning of being able to welcome Heather. Now, Heather's got a pretty cool story to tell. But why don't you just introduce yourself to us a little bit, Heather?
There might be a photo, I'm hoping, of my family. There we go. So I'm Heather. I was born in Papua New Guinea on Good Friday, a long time ago. And I was born there but came back to Australia when I was 3. Raised in Melbourne in a wonderful Christian home. Aaron and I got married 21 years ago and moved to Ballarat. And I told him then I would give Ballarat 5 years. Yeah. And I said after that I want to be back in Melbourne. And those 5 years came and went, and we didn't ever have that discussion because
Ballarat has that effect on people.
We both knew this is where we wanted to be. We are the very, very lucky parents of 3 children, Jacinda, Callum and Jacob. And in the bottom picture is Scott. And a lot of you may have seen Scott come to church with us. Scott came into our lives when we moved to Ballarat. And we look after him one weekend a month and have been doing that for 21 years now, just to give his family a bit of respite. And he's such a great kid, or an adult now, and he loves coming to church. You'll often see him pop up in his pew ready to worship particularly.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm a primary school teacher. That's my main thing that I do during the days. Yeah.
Well, we're hoping to be inspired by your story of faith this morning through what you've been doing with the reverse Advent calendar. But why don't you give us a bit of an idea of your faith journey so far?
Sure. So like I said, I was born into a Christian family, and as a child just always went to church. And as a teenager, I remember making that decision for myself that, yes, this is what I want to do, and I want to be a Christian and follow God. And in my time, there's been times where I've lent in really hard, and I've just been faithful in my daily devotions and my prayer life. And there's also been periods where I haven't, and I've maybe cruised along and just still come to church every Sunday and appeared to be doing the right things. But my faith journey in the reverse Advent calendar has really happened at a time where I really was digging in and asking God what he had in store for me.
Yeah, well, it's quite natural in our faith journeys to feel, closer to God at some times than others, but as easy as it is to sometimes just relax and into that, complacency. What I love about your story, Heather, is the way that you just weren't satisfied with, the mediocre, that you knew God had something more for you, and you were really hungry to seek that out. And why don't you tell us about the digging? How did that look for you?
Sure. So I stumbled upon this idea of a reverse Advent calendar years ago when my children were younger, and I just love the idea. Basically, it's an empty box, and unlike a regular Advent calendar where each day the children take a treat out, and my children still did that. They had their Lego Advent calendars and their Smiggle ones and enjoyed all of those. But the idea of this is that every day, instead of receiving a treat, you're giving something. So every day the children would have a roster of whose turn it was to go to the pantry and choose something to add to the box. And then when the box is full, just before Christmas, it gets donated. And for the first few years, it was just my family, just the one box, and we would donate our box to the 3BA appeal. And every year I would tell friends about it, and people would say, it's such a great idea, I love that. I'll do it with you next year. And the next year would come, and the same people would say to me, it's a great idea, I'd love to do that, I'll do it next year. And I knew it was a great idea, and I saw how much my children got out of it and the conversations we had. So I was beginning thoughts of what this could be.
Yeah, that's all right. So you were starting to notice that that there was something a little bit more in this idea of giving around that time of year, and people had expressed some interest. So when was it that you how did it happen that you started to build that idea and that inkling, that dream that you had, and the potential you could see in the idea? How did that come into being what it is today?
So I think it was back in 2018, I decided I'm going to invite people to do this with me. So I put on Facebook, just for my family and friends, this is what I'm doing. I'd love to maybe get 4 other families to join us, and I'll cover a box in Christmas paper and give it to you. You fill it, and then just before Christmas, I'll collect it and drop it off. Oh, and I should have said that the Christmas just before that, we'd missed the drop-off date for our box for 3BA appeal. And the kids and I had been really disappointed to know that this box we'd spent all this time filling wasn't going to be with someone on Christmas Day. And my sister happened to visit that on Christmas Eve, and she works or volunteers at Wendouree West Exodus House. And she said, look, I know a family that would absolutely benefit from this box. Why don't I go and drop it at their doorstep on the way home? So she did that. And that was just so powerful to think that the next morning, a family who I had never met, who I'll probably never meet, were waking up on Christmas morning, and there was a box that was just going to make their day a bit brighter. And it had been so easy for us to do, but it was going to impact them. So then the following year I invited others to join in, hoping for 4.
And you're going to wrap these boxes with Christmas paper?
I, was wrapping them up. I got the boxes at Bunnings. But I posted it, and then the next couple of minutes I was overwhelmed with this feeling of, Heather, just shut up. Like, just leave people to do, life's busy enough, leave people alone, let them do what they want to do. And
the doubt.
Pull your head back in.
Creeps in.
Doubt, yep. But within minutes, my lovely friend Michelle called me on the phone, and she said, Heather, I'm so glad you've put that up. I've been wanting to do it, and I'm in. We're in. We want to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad, because I really do think that had she not called, had she not followed that stirring to call me, I may have deleted it, and who knows?
Chickened out.
Who knows whether it would have come back up again.
So was she the only one that responded to that post?
No, it was very overwhelming, and we ended up that year with over 70 people doing boxes across Ballarat. So that was a lot of boxes for me to get from Bunnings and wrap in paper, but I loved doing it. Like, every box I did, I kept thinking, I'd know the family it was going to, and I would think, they're going to enjoy doing this so much, and it was great. And all those boxes went that year to Exodus House. And it continued this thought of, well, if this many people want to do it, there must be more. There must be more. And then the courier covered it that year. They came and took a photo, and it was on the front page, much to my don't like that. And so it's begun this thinking that it could be bigger. And I should have put the two together, but I didn't. But I was also starting to pray to God that I wanted a project that was mine. And I know it seems obvious now that it was the same thing, but I didn't realise.
Takes us a while sometimes.
So I was on my daily walks, as I'd walk and pray, I'd say, I really want a project that's mine, not one that somebody's invited me to be on their committee, part of their organising. I want to own it. And I wanted it to be about families, kindness and generosity. They were the 3 things that I prayed into it. And I waited, because I didn't see the obvious. I went away that year with friends to the Colour Conference in Sydney and had a great time, fabulous teaching that was there, and conversations with the group I was with. And one conversation that really was sticking with me was the one of, what would you do if you knew it couldn't fail? If you knew you wouldn't end up looking silly, what would you do? And I had this box thing in mind that I would do it bigger if I could, if I knew that it would work. And Renata Dempsey was part of that group, and she was on the missions committee, and she could see the potential for it being something that the church did to encourage families to be missional. So I returned from that, and not long after that, a friend from church, Karen, called me, and she said, Heather, someone from church has given me some money that God has told them is for you. And I'd never experienced that before. I'd heard people talk about that sort of thing, but not for me. And so I began thinking, why does God want me to have this money? And then I was on my walk, and I think of it nearly every time I walk over this one bit of footpath, where exactly I was when it hit me that God was saying, this is money to go forward with the project, with the boxes. And this is your project you've been praying about for families, for kindness, for generosity. So I was like, all right, I've got money. Then what do I need to no longer be covering boxes from Bunnings? So I contacted...
with wrapping paper.
Contacted Neil Walter, who is a very talented designer, and I said, I'd love a logo for Reverse Advent Calendar and a design for a box. And we talked back and forward about it. One of the challenges was that it needed to have the two purposes. It needed to suit the people that were filling it, but it also needed to suit those that received it. So there were some great conversations in that. And so I said to him, would he do this? And he said, yes, but you won't pay me, I'll sponsor it as a project. And I was like, well, that's amazing. And his time and effort he's given me over the years with them has been fabulous. But that's what I thought the money was for. And so what are we doing? What do I do now? But then, of course, there was the cost of getting the boxes printed. And between that and the support of the missions committee at church, and even locally some politicians that got on board.
So you had 70 friends join you the first year. So when you printed these boxes, how many boxes did you print?
So when we printed them, it was cheaper to go to 500. That made it cheaper. So I said, let's get 500 printed, and maybe we'll do 200 here in Ballarat. My friend Rachel Francis had moved to Geelong, and she was keen to do it there, so she was aiming for 100. And I figured the leftover boxes I'd put in storage somewhere, and we'd be ready to go for the following year. I then launched a Facebook group so that it wasn't just my friends that knew about it. It could go across Ballarat. And within days, we ran out of those 500 boxes and had to order more. And in the end, that year, in 2019, in the end, we had 1,500 boxes ordered and gone.
1,500.
It's
incredible.
Yes.
And from your original goal of maybe we can get 200 to happen here in Ballarat.
And this happens every year, that I think to myself, all right, well, if we can get this number, that'll be great. And then God just says, we can do more.
It's amazing. I love that. And so as, you progressed through, you started that first year, you started to see this could really be something, I think, and it's something that really speaks to families and, speaks to members of the community who want to be able to do the same thing as Heather and have those conversations and just be able to teach their kids a little bit more about giving and thinking of others at Christmas time. And it started to really take off. So was there ever any sort of challenges or doubts along the way that...
There's been many. And so last year, at the start of the year, Aaron and I took a day to plan and pray about Reverse Advent Calendar and think about the future. And that was just before COVID became a thing. And so at the time, the plan was, let's offer this as something that people can do beyond Ballarat. If there's communities, churches, groups across Australia, why not? So that was the plan, and then I advertised, good old Facebook, for people that would like to sign up, and I had over 60 people contact me from across Australia and wanting to get involved, and through conversations, we ended up with 16 different groups And they were in the end all across Victoria, with the exception of one in Canberra, mainly because of COVID, and also working through the cost of getting boxes to places beyond Victoria was costly.
Yeah.
So last year that was, so 16 that got involved. There were times we thought it just wouldn't be able to happen. It would be impossible. The groups in Melbourne wouldn't be able to get up here to collect their boxes because they weren't allowed out. And but I couldn't help but think, in a year when so many people were doing it tough and so many people were going to be in need, that it wasn't a coincidence that was the year God was showing me and wanting me to make it bigger.
Yeah.
So I just persisted with that thought and went, we'll see what comes from it.
Yeah.
So
in a year full of extra challenges, how many boxes?
Yeah. So last year, Ballarat, we did the same as the year before, 1,500, which is incredible. The people in a year when they had done it so tough were so generous.
Yeah.
And it was often people who had businesses suffer that I was seeing fill boxes and bring them in. And then beyond Ballarat, another 1,500. So 3,000 altogether last year we had filled.
That's incredible. 3,000 boxes. So with all these boxes going out to families in need, do you have some stories you could share with us of perhaps some of the families that have received and what that has meant for them at that time of year?
So every year I get amazing feedback from the agencies that take the boxes. So originally the boxes in Ballarat were going to the Wendouree West Exodus House, but when it got so big, so many boxes, we were then able to contact other agencies and get them involved. So there was last year probably around a dozen Ballarat agencies, ones that I'd never even heard of, that are doing incredible work, that came to collect them. So these are 3 quick stories sent from one agency that highlight the impact that the boxes have had. So first of all, Kim has 5 children aged 1 year through to 12. Her husband passed away 6 months ago, and she's been struggling with both deep depression and the behaviours of her eldest child with a disability. We delivered 2 boxes to Kim, who told us that this food delivery meant that she could divert her grocery money and that she could then, with her own money, buy a present for each of her children that Christmas. Then Mike's a war veteran and an amputee. He's currently on a waiting list to have his second leg amputated and struggles on a disability pension. Mike is very proud and did not want to accept help. But when our staff unpacked his items, they discovered that his cupboards were actually bare and he likely would not have eaten again until his next payday. And then Lyndall attended our office today and burst into tears describing her children coming home for Christmas for the first time in 10 years. She felt ashamed that she didn't have anything special to offer them. 20 minutes of box diving later, and we managed to mix and match until we had an entire decorated Christmas table with Christmas napkins, mini trees, and special treats for everyone.
Yeah.
So, just 3, and the examples that I could go on with.
Each box would have a story.
Each box does, the people that receive it. And the big picture of Reverse Advent Calendar, the obvious benefit is those that receive the boxes, but it's also the stories I hear from the families that fill the boxes. And when I think of my prayer for kindness, families, and generosity, part of that is the people receiving the boxes, but it's also so much the families that are filling it. And when I'm talking to people and they say how much their children, they wake up in the morning and it's the first thing on their mind. Whose turn is it to put something in their box and what will they put in? And conversations they have with children where the child's like, well, if we're giving them Weet-Bix, we need to make sure they've got milk. And then, well, they'll need juice as well for breakfast. And some of our boxes go to asylum seekers or homeless youth. And so there's conversations that families get to have about those needs. And I hear from people that those conversations continue throughout the year, that there's other times during the year where they will be reminded of it, or it inspires generosity at other occasions. Yeah.
And even just on the packing days when we get to, members of our church community, some of you guys may have volunteered on Reverse Advent Calendar box packing day in the past, but it's such a blessing to be a part of it and to see all the families from throughout our community bringing their boxes in and getting to come into our church building and have conversations with other members of our congregation. And everyone's always amazed at the big walls of boxes. We have boxes from floor to ceiling in some of the rooms before the agencies come and collect them or they're delivered or whatever. But it's just incredible to be a part of, and it's a blessing for the families that are packing it, the church community that is, working together to get the logistics of everything happening, and then it's a blessing for the people receiving it. So, yeah,
and
it's just
I couldn't
incredible.
do it without the people that volunteer on that day, and people that turn up that I haven't asked, that have just seen the need, and they're amazing. People whose names I only learn on that day, and I'm so grateful to them, and they'll give hours and hours and then return the next day to help us send the boxes out to the agencies. And it's those people that drop off their boxes contact me later and they say, look, it was just lovely to go there and to see the boxes, and I was met by this lovely young girl and she was just so delightful and she couldn't wait to show us the boxes. And I think what a positive interaction and experience for so many people that may never have been into a church or into our church, that this is their visual, that's their image, their thought of what church is.
Yeah, it's great. Well, Heather, how can we as a church family support you? How can we be praying for you? And is there anything you practically need to sort of help? Where's your vision for it in the future?
So, absolutely prayer, to pray that God would continue to drive it, that in every step it's felt like it required skills beyond what I'm equipped with. I love that quote, God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. And he's doing that with me every step of the way. I'm learning things as I go. I'm so grateful for people like Anthony here at the church who helped me last year, particularly with the invoicing and money stuff that I don't have my head around yet. Prayer that I would continue to grow in my skills and that I would bring people in. I'm keen to create a team. Yeah. I also really wanting help to work out how to turn it into a proper not-for-profit or charity organisation. Yeah. I think that's the next step for it for us to do that. The website, I'm needing to get that built up more so that people can contact me through there and apply to be involved. Yeah. I'm keen to see this grow however God lets it grow. Yeah. If it remains a Victoria thing, then that's fine. But it just works. Yeah. And it's worked so well. And if we can find a way and make it not cost prohibitive to get the boxes to people beyond Victoria, I would love to see it become a thing that happens all over Australia and where it's as well known as Operation Christmas Child or things, because it's powerful for the people receiving the boxes and those filling it.
Yeah, it really is.
So yeah, they're my main things: to build the website, create a team, and the logistics of a not-for-profit.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, thank you, Heather. Thank you for coming and sharing your story with us today and just inspiring us that, sometimes it doesn't have to be, selling up your whole life and going overseas to do missions, that we can do mission right here in our local community. And, when God places a dream or an idea on your heart, he's going to provide for that. Yeah. And I can just see God providing for you every step of the way in this journey, in, your skills and abilities that you probably underestimate, but God certainly doesn't. And, in just the finances and the knowledge and the skills from everyone else who's contributed. But yeah, it's just a powerful story. I'd love to pray for you as we close. Guys, would you just bow your heads in prayer? Father God, I thank you for today, and I thank you for Heather and her willingness to come and share with us this morning. I also want to thank you for her faithfulness and her obedience, just that humble servant heart that she has to listen to you and just seek more from you, God. Like, it's easy to get complacent and think that this is all there is for us. But, if we want it and if we seek it, Jesus, you want to speak to us. You want to show us those dreams and desires that we have come to life. And God, we just want to thank you for the way you've provided every step of this journey for Reverse Advent Calendar and for Heather. We want to pray a blessing over all those involved, whether it's the families contributing to boxes, whether it's people designing the logos, whether it's the printing of the boxes or the families actually receiving these boxes. I want to pray a blessing over this whole project, and we can't wait to see what you've got in store for it, God. And I just pray that you use every single one of us, whether it's through supporting Heather in prayer or practically with our skills and abilities. I just pray that you speak to the right people that need to come and have a chat with Heather. And I want to pray for any dreams or ideas that we might have on our hearts, members of the congregation. If someone's sitting out there that's just got a little spark of an idea, that you would fan it into a flame, God, and show that it's not in our power but in yours, that these things can be done, and really see your glory shine. In Jesus' name, amen.